I take it you can see me okay?
Still looking at the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Ken, we don't see your picture. Your deck will show up at the right time, but your picture, looks like your camera's not on. I don't know if you wanted it on or not. There you are.
There we are.
Okay.
Enter and sign in, please.
See, is Jenna with us yet? I know she's not going to be on for probably too close to 5:30, but I just wanted to. Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, Jenna.
Present.
Good afternoon.
Hello. All right, 2-minute warning. Less than 2 weeks to the unofficial end of summer. It was beautiful out on the golf course today. I saw the sprinklers on the new Creek 9 pop up, and it's 5 p.m.
Thank you, Tim. This is our August the 26th monthly board meeting. And we'd like to begin, of course, as we have in the past, with Scott's administrative report. The second section will actually be a presentation by Big Canoes Volunteer Fire Department President Ken Beckley, and then we'll move back to financial matters led by Scott Auer and our treasurer, Amy Truffenbaum, and then followed by a sales report. And then lastly, our business section, which we do have a number of items to discuss and vote on tonight. So Scott, we'll start with your administration report.
Great. Thank you, Candace. Guys, can we put the slides up? There we go. Let's start with our beautiful clubhouse.
Join the meeting.
And we can go to the next slide. We are massively excited to announce that Jonathan Prince, who is the handsome young man there surrounded by people in blue, Jonathan has been selected as our new food and beverage manager. And he has tremendous support in the community, and he has lots of support on the board and lots of support from the staff. It's rare that I've seen somebody who checks all of those boxes. Employees love him, property owners love him, board loves him. It's really a great testament to the service that Jonathan has provided to food and beverage for a long time. So we did do an open look and posting, and Jonathan came in miles beyond anybody else that we looked at. So we're pleased that Jonathan is in that role, and he has a lot of work going on that is going to, I think, surprise and delight a few people and a bunch of property owners. And we'll just kind of keep that as a teaser for now, but there'll be a lot more coming about that in the next few weeks. So Jonathan is already busy behind the scenes. So when you see him, give him a hug, a handshake, a high five, well-earned promotion for Jonathan. Next slide. And we have now extended Tuesday night hours at the clubhouse. They've been extended to 7 p.m. So you have dinner one more night of the week. We did reduce the hours on Sunday afternoon, however, and honestly, that was done as much for the staff as anything else. When we do brunch and we do dinner on Sunday, we've got folks that are arriving at 8 o'clock in the morning and they're going home at 8 o'clock at night. So they're putting in a 12-hour day on Sunday. And then they were only off one day and then they're right back again on Tuesday. So this was a way of kind of saying thank you to the employees. We are still certainly short of servers, like the 1.6 million open jobs in the hospitality industry across America. We're right in there with them. So we don't want to wear out the folks we have. So this was a way of kind of a compromise of saying there's a really nice meal on Sunday. It gets better and better from everything I keep hearing about the brunch on Sunday morning. And then we extended the Duffers hours so that way you can still catch a bite when you come off of your late 9 holes in the afternoon. And then Tuesday night will now be open. And we're working with the Bear Society to program some interesting things on Tuesday night, as well as the Friday nights. We just did one last weekend, which was a crazy, wild, packed, nutty, fun time on Friday night. And we've got more to come. So Tuesday opens up another option for us to do some things with the Bear Society. So we're programming that already too. Next slide. Outdoor events, and I want to underline the word outdoor. I mean, we're clearly concerned and watching like crazy what's happening around us with COVID. I think Bob Crouch will be talking about that a little bit later. So we're trying to do our best to program as many things outdoors as we possibly can. So next slide. We are doing Oktoberfest on October 9th. We moved it, however, so it's not on the soccer field, it's on play field. The main reason we did that is we did not want to pack a whole bunch of people into a shuttle bus. And as you all remember from Oktoberfest in the past, you do it on the soccer field, all the parking's over at play field, you're running people back and forth on cramped shuttle buses. We didn't feel that was a really great idea. So basically we moved it back to Playfield Park. P&E committee's making some adjustments, but it's still going to be a really fun, great time. I think everybody had a marvelous time at 4th of July. This will be even better, but we won't need the shuttle buses. Next slide. And giving you just a summary, there's monthly movie nights that Terry and the P&E guys are still programming. We have a Labor Day bike parade set up. This is the, hard to believe, the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Some very neat and appropriate things being planned that day to remember the sacrifice of all those folks on that horrific day. Mountain Twilight, we have a tribute to Neil Diamond. So one of actually, as Mark De La Vina mentioned to me today, one of the most popular single entertainers like of all time, actually, in terms of record sales and things. Neil Diamond, look-alike, sound-alike, great performer alike, will be here on the 26th, and we'll be doing that on Playfield Park again for the Mountain Twilight. And that's fun because we couldn't do it last year. So it's nice to bring that back. Trunk or Treat right now is programmed for my birthday, October 30th. And Christmas drive-through was so much fun last year. We're making that even a bigger attraction this year. So that's the November 27th date for that. So lots of stuff. P&E committee is really busy for the balance of the year. We will definitely need volunteers to help out. So watch for those opportunities to come. Next slide. Amenities. That's almost what, it's getting close. That's almost what Creek 9 looks like again, almost. But that's a beautiful shot of a very young future professional there. So just a nice factoid. Sometimes people ask me how the amenities are doing, and there's been a really nice, steady, healthy rise in all amenity membership areas. So golf, tennis, swimming, and fishing memberships all hit the highest number of memberships in 8 years for the month of August. So Terry keeps popping out really interesting promotions about mugs and special things and one free month and things like that. So a lot of you are responding to having a nice sit down with Terry, and the numbers are terrific. So keep it coming. The amenities are doing great. Next slide. And this group is always kind of fun to talk about. The marina had 3,034 two-hour pontoon boat rentals in the first 7 months of 2021. So when we built the budget for John, I think John was looking at me like, we'll never make it. We'll just can't do it. They have far exceeded the 2021 budget and done just beautifully, focusing on customer service and delighting people. And the ratio of property owners versus guests, were at 73% pontoon rentals by property owners versus 27% on guests. That ratio is starting to skew just a little bit more towards guests. We took the guest fees up this year from 50 to 75 an hour. We've been meeting all week on the 2022 budget. Hard to imagine that we're back there, but we are. And we're certainly looking at continuing that trend and making sure that property owners have as much access to the pontoon boats as they can possibly get, and probably looking at a guest rate increase again. And we benchmarked it against other marinas in the area and things. And even at 75, we're still quite a bargain. So we'll probably be making changes and recommending that to the board in November for next year. Next slide. This is something to be really proud of. The indoor tennis courts have been going through a massive renovation. We had, for those of you who didn't go to that building too often, we had a very, very old leaky roof. We had rotten insulation on all the walls. The paint was dingy. The stairwell looked like it was left over from 1972, which I think it almost was. Furniture was bad. It kind of went on and on. So we have done a massive renovation there to bring it up to Big Canoe standards. So you'll see there all new curtains, all new insulation, all new paint. The roof doesn't leak anymore. The furniture upstairs looks worthy of a nice racket club, and we're proud of it. So on the restrooms, we renovated too, because they were kind of nutty, and the marina restrooms were the nicest ones we had. And you don't really want to go from the indoor tennis court to the marina when you have to use the restroom. So we kind of fixed that too. So that is opening tomorrow. So stop by and take a look at it. It's a lot to be proud of. It looks really nice. So thank you to Linda and Jeff, and a tremendous amount of work that was done by lots of people to make that happen. Next slide. And as Tim said at the beginning, hard to imagine, but summer is, even though it finally just arrived, which is kind of nutty, it's drawn to a close soon. So basically, Disharoon is only open on weekends, basically until Labor Day, and then Wildcat will be open on weekends and then closing for the season on September 26th. So we were blessed; we were able to get some of the Disharoon season back, and we're making nice plans and upgrades for the beach club in our budgets for next year. So already thinking ahead to opening in April with a nice pristine lake. Next slide. And Public Works, let's talk about what our guys have been doing there. Go ahead in the next slide. Who are those people out there, Mr. Littell? Who is that? So we have 30 miles of roads that have been striped so far with nice new reflective paint. There's a lot of reflectors actually being installed in the next couple of weeks that will be gate to gate and on the majority of the main roads that are 2,000 feet and above. So watch for shiny reflectors coming soon. I got caught behind a mower today, trying to get back to the lodge. So road shoulder mowing continues. We've had 4 gate arms that have been damaged. Please don't drive through gate arms when they're down. It's not good for your car. It's also not good for the gate arm. So we've done 4 of those, and a water line we replaced at the dog park, as you can see the Littels out there. So a bunch of busy things happening with our public works folks. Next slide. One more, please. Our beautiful fire station. And now our not so beautiful, but rather necessary. This was a reaction that we built into the budget for this year based on property owner feedback on Ask the POA, the satisfaction survey that we did in January, and quite honestly corroborated by a lot of the phone calls we made as to a group of property owners as we did some qualitative research to put the strategic planning committee survey together that's out for filling in right now. Everybody kept saying, we've got great rules, enforce the rules, enforce the rules, enforce the rules. So this is one way of enforcing the rules. We added a brand new speed tracking trailer that actually takes photographs. It, first of all, notifies you of what your speed is if you're above a certain limit, and I won't tell you what that magic number is because then you'll drive at that number. But if you're above a certain limit, it will take a picture of your license plate and it will send that to public safety, and we will look that license plate up in Dwelling Live and we'll determine who should get that fine. So it is something that if we all drive at the speed limit and all drive as safely as we should be doing in Big Canoe with our crazy mountain roads, then you don't have to worry about this device. So the people that are worried about this device are probably not driving. If it says you're driving 100 miles an hour right now, it's probably because it's being, I hope, because it's being calibrated. So we're not sending out any citations or anything from this right now. Public safety is actually out calibrating this, and it should be fully operational within a week or so. So that, I think, is good news. And one more thing, along with the gates being manned 24/7, and along with public safety now having an additional person to beef up patrols, this is all part of our plan to enhance our rule enforcement in 2021. Okay, next slide. And that is a picture of our spillway, actually, with an awful lot of water going down there, coming from Lake Pettit and heavy rainfall. Go ahead to the next slide. Despite having over 10 inches extra of rain the previous month of June, we had it again in July. So if it feels to you like summer was really short this year, kind of feels that way to me. It was. So unfortunately, we have had a lot of rain. Things are really green, and that's good, but it obviously slowed down our progress on Disharoon, as we've talked about before. And we actually lost 6 days of golf in the month of July, which is the first time I think that's happened since I've been here. So I think that's the first time in a year and a half that we've lost that many days of golf in a month. So it was a pretty darn wet July. So just wanted to let you know that what you feel is actually true. All right, next slide. And despite that, is amazing. Sanders has been able to keep up between the raindrops, and we're still on track for really getting pretty much all of the golf course completed and being fully grassed and be starting the full grow in. If you look right now, a lot of the fairways are done and looking beautiful. This kind of weather is fantastic for Bermuda grass fairways. And so a lot of the holes look absolutely stunning. So all of the greens will be seeded soon, and we will be hoping that that crazy amount of rainfall doesn't necessarily continue into the fall. But we are on track for Creek 9, and it's starting to look stunning. So next slide. Survey. That eagle is telling you to fill out the survey with that look. So go ahead, next slide. Just to remind everybody, the strategic planning survey is extremely important. This is something that Regis has been heading up with the strategic planning committee. It is a very, very, very underlined, very valuable tool that committee will be using to help craft the vision statement for the next 50 years of Big Canoe. And also that our team will be using to work out all the tactics we should be doing for 2022. So this is really your chance to be heard. It takes about 15 minutes to fill out that survey. So far, we've got about 1,400 folks, property owners and co-owners that have already responded. We would love to have that number be over 2,000 by the end of the weekend. So if everybody can take about 15 minutes, it should be sitting in your inbox right now. If it's not, it's a good chance that it's in your Gmail promotions folder. So please check there. And if it's not there, it's a possibility it's in your spam folder. If all of that doesn't work out, next slide, please. You can send out and just reach out to us at surveys@bigcanoepoa.org. And Catherine Dye has been helping about 10 people a day to find the survey or to send you a different one or to say, oh, you really didn't have an active email address on file with the POA, so let me help you with that. And if all of those techniques fail, then we'll find a way to get you a paper survey. So one way or another, we want your input. Please, please, please complete the survey by 11:59 on Thursday, September 2nd, which is a week from today. Next slide. And that's all I had, Candace.
Hey, thanks, Scott.
You're welcome.
Well, next I'd like to present Ken Beckley, who's the president of the volunteer Big Canoes Fire Department, and he'll spend the next 10 minutes or so educating the community on the roles and responsibilities of this very important organization. Ken has a training assignment with the volunteer fire department at 7 p.m. tonight, and so we wanted to make sure he had adequate time before his next engagement to speak with us this afternoon. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ken.
Candace, thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity to share some information about the Big Canoe Volunteer Fire Department. I'd like to provide some information on what we do and how we serve this community. I just wanted to start by showing our logo.
Get a little closer to your mic, thank you.
Okay. Wanted to take this, start off by just showing you our logo and just pay attention to our pillars. The tradition, courage, pride, and honor. I'll circle back to that a little later. Next slide. The volunteers all live in Big Canoe. They're your neighbors. In these photos, everybody in a dark blue shirt is a member of the volunteer fire department, and they're all residents of Big Canoe. Next slide, please. The fire department is made up of a combination of professionals and volunteers. Obviously, we have Chief Ricky Jordan, there's lieutenants and full-time and part-time firefighters that staff the firehouse in the village 24/7. Next slide, please. And the volunteers augment them and assist them as needed. Everybody on this list, this is our current roster, has gone through an 8-week training class to be a certified support firefighter. Some of our volunteers have gone through additional training, very rigorous training, to be certified interior firefighters. 3 of those volunteers are ladies. They've gone through a very difficult training program and they're tough as nails. In addition, some of the volunteers have gone through an 8-week training class related to emergency medical response. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. Next slide, please. This is a rundown of some of the functions of the volunteer fire department. First and foremost, we support the professional firefighters, both in terms of manpower and from a financial standpoint. The volunteer fire department is a charitable organization, and we accept donations and we can provide financial support to the fire department. We're a 501c3 charitable organization. And in addition to the support, both from manpower and financially, we help with fire suppression, variety of things on down the line. medical assistance, public safety activities, fire prevention, community support, etc. Next slide, please. We put in a lot of time. 2019 is probably the most recent representative year. And there was about 3,100 hours, man hours, people hours, in terms of training and assistance and public service by the members of the volunteer fire department, whether it's firefighting, search and rescue, community service, public safety, whichever. Now, I'm also a member of the Trails Committee, and I can tell you that person for person, this organization puts in a lot of time. So, and I know what I'm talking about. Next slide, please. Here's a couple of photos. I just wanted to illustrate. This was probably our last big fire episode about 18 months ago. This was the fire over on, what was it, Lily Slipper, Lady Slipper, I'm sorry. And the first person on scene there was a volunteer. It was a volunteer who lived nearby. The volunteer was out there right away and radioed in a very, very good report. So the professionals that were en route knew what they were dealing with and how to set up. Now, the people that were renting this house took their sweet time on making a call. So by the time the equipment arrived, this house was in was pretty fully enveloped. The first equipment arrived within about 7 or 8 minutes of the call. The fire department responded in a manner that prevented other homes from being involved. Had they not responded as quickly as they did, and in the way they did, we could have lost 3, 4, 5 other homes. This occurred in October. The woods were pretty dry, so they soaked down the woods around it in addition to fighting the fire and limited it to that structure. I also want to point out the 2 volunteers stayed out at this scene all night with one of the vehicles to make sure that no pop-up fires occurred. The next day was Oktoberfest, and despite all of that, we had a pretty full turnout to help with Oktoberfest for all the traffic. Next slide, please. Again, fire suppression, we want to get it at the source. The last thing we want to do is get into a Gatlinburg scenario where we're fighting a wildland fire. Next slide. We get a lot of medical calls. I've got an app on my phone, it goes off pretty regularly. And we have EMTs and paramedics on staff that are at the fire department. And again, some of our volunteers have gone through training for emergency medical response, and we can assist them as needed. Next slide, please. Big Canoes got a lot of curvy roads, they're narrow, and cars go off the road. The fire department responds to those, deals with it, extracts people from the wreckage. The volunteers support that. I think it's important to note that in the last couple of years, with more and more electric cars coming out, when those batteries catch fire, they burn hot and they burn long. This has gotten to be a much more dangerous game over the last couple of years, and it's only going to get worse. So that's a new challenge. Next slide, please. These are the various public safety activities that the volunteers are supporting. Obviously, we do a lot of traffic control, but we're involved in storm-related clearing, air operation support, fire hydrant testing, water safety, etc. Next slide. We assist in a lot of traffic control. Obviously, whenever the North Georgia Vets and the Boy Scouts are putting out the banners on the Pettit Dam, we're out there. It takes about 4 people to close down the dam to 1 lane. The July 4th, Oktoberfest, and the holiday light events are all hands on deck. We spend a lot of time doing that. If you remember, during the holidays, the light show was very, very popular, as Scott said. We had hundreds and hundreds of cars through there, and you may remember that it was a cold, wet, miserable night. And the volunteers were out there all evening, standing out in that to make sure everybody got through in a safe manner. We also do a lot of other traffic control at other events, such as the Kids Hooked on Fishing and whatever else may be. Next slide, please. Storm related, we get a lot of storms, trees down. The volunteers and the firefighters help clear some of the roads. Also during winter emergencies, the volunteers are assisting to get people to and from their residences, respond to medical emergencies, and do whatever else is necessary. Next slide. A number of our volunteers are certified and trained in ground support for medevac operations. We have those occasionally. Next slide, please. As I said, we're involved in the fire hydrant and hose testing. Big Canoe has hundreds of fire hydrants. Every one of those needs to be located, inspected, and maintained every year. The volunteers spend a lot of time on this. This is usually a pretty big effort. So we have to find them, clear debris and vegetation, open them, grease the fittings, pressure test them, flush them. And last year we painted every one so they were much easier to find. What this list doesn't tell you is that while we're clearing the debris and vegetation, it doesn't talk about the copperheads, the wasps, the yellow jackets, the dog leavings, etc., that we have to deal with. In addition, we're involved in testing every hose. When the fire department shows up in an area, we want to make sure that the hydrants work and the hoses don't leak. Next slide, please. We have people that have gone through training on water safety, on swift water rescue, and on lake safety. Obviously, the fireboat is out on certain occasions. Over the 4th of July weekend, we had a professional and a volunteer out there all day. At the end of the fireworks, that boat was the last off the lake because invariably one of the, there's a couple of boats that lose their juice and have to be towed in. We also have personnel that go on the smaller lakes, such as Scanti, when we have the cardboard boat regatta. I can tell you that a lot of those boats are not designed and built by Georgia Tech engineers, so some of them fall apart pretty quick. We've had to render assistance. Next slide, please. We do a lot of training. Some of it's hands-on, some of it can be physically challenging. We do it either at the main station or at the training center over off of Hubbard Road. Next slide, please. We also do classroom and online training. In many cases, we do online training a few days before we have a hands-on exercise. We have training every Thursday night, and a good number of our volunteers show up. We try to make the hands-on training as realistic as possible. Next slide, please. This is just a sampling of a number of the subject matters that we have to deal with. We have to have some operational awareness, and you can see here, this isn't everything, but this is a pretty good sampling of all of the areas that we have to have some rudimentary knowledge of, whether it's firefighting, vehicle extraction, hazmat, you name it. So it's a lot of material, and that's why we have training every week. Next slide, please. We're involved in public education. The fire department has provided seminars on chimney fires and fire prevention. I'm pleased to say that we're coordinating with the Big Canoe Wellness Collaborative this year to have seminars on stroke awareness and heart health. Next slide, please. Next month, we're going to be having a public safety day, September 25th. Please put it on your calendars. We encourage everyone to show up. All the residents, visit the station, see the equipment, see the new emergency operations center. There's going to be demonstrations of equipment. There'll be some refreshments, and we hope to recruit a few volunteers once they get the lay of the land. Again, September 25th, like to see a big turnout. Next slide, please. We have a lot of equipment, and the full-timers do most of the maintenance on it, but the volunteers assist. We have to move it around. A number of our volunteers have Class F licenses, and they're able to move some of the equipment around also. Next slide, please. This is an inventory of some of the major equipment. We have a lot of equipment at the main station, but we also have equipment stationed around Big Canoe and some of those barns and sheds you see. Those supplemental engines can be brought on scene if needed. The reason we have those allows us to have a very favorable ISO rating. And I'll tell you right now that the more favorable the ISO rating, the better your homeowner insurance premiums. Next slide, please. We're involved in a lot of community support. As you can see from these photos, we've had the Christmas parade. A lot of time goes into decorating those trucks. It's a lot of fun. In the lower left, you can see that we're putting up a lot of the displays for the Christmas lights extravaganza. And I'd say the fire department, the volunteers and professionals probably put up 80 to 90% of all the decorations. And we had to take them down too. Mm-hmm. In the lower right, you'll see that we also got recognition from Anheuser-Busch. We got a big shipment of emergency water. Those come in cans, so that helps because they have a much longer shelf life. As I said, we're a charitable organization and we've been doing fundraising, but we haven't done anything in person the last couple of years because of COVID. We're planning on having a big fundraising event in the spring. We hope it might be a casino night again. We're not sure, but please be aware. And when we do have it, we'd like to see a big turnout. Next slide, please. I'll circle back around to the first slide, talking about tradition, courage, pride, and honor. I've been a member of this group for about 4 years, and we do have a very good tradition. If you look on the upper right-hand slide, there's not a lot of people that are willing to put themselves in this kind of a situation. We take a lot of pride in what we do, and I'll say it's certainly an honor to serve along Chief Jordan, and I'll speak for all the volunteers and say it's an honor to serve the community. With that, I'll turn it back over to Candace and be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Ken, does anyone on the board have any questions of Ken? Okay. Well, thank you, Ken, for being here this evening. This is
Thanks for your time.
Okay. Well, I'll turn it back to Scott to talk to you about July financial matters.
Before I say that, I just wanted to thank Ken, because I don't know about you guys, but as a property owner, one of the main reasons I moved to Big Canoe was when I learned there was this amazing public safety department on site. And we probably wouldn't have come to the mountains if it hadn't been for that. And we did the public safety budget for 2022 today. There is no way possible that we could run the public safety department without the volunteers. There's just not enough money. We would just never be able to hire that kind of staff, that kind of training, all the equipment. They raise money, they donate key things that Ricky's team needs, and just the time and the energy. So many hands touch so many things, whether it's the Christmas lights or helping with a house that's burning down. So thank you. We couldn't do it. It's just amazing. So thank you. It's awesome.
Thank you.
With that, let's talk about something boring, which is finance. So go ahead, next slide. So July was another good month for us. So I always love to start at the bottom of slides. People tease me about that all the time with financials. So total actual income for the amenities in July was $190,204. That's 18,000, roughly 900 better than budget. So if you kind of work top down, Clubhouse lost 11,405. It was supposed to lose $1,600 less than that. So, and we'll talk a lot more about Clubhouse because I always like to do that later. But so don't be alarmed by the $11,000 loss. It was planned to be there, just not quite that much, $1,600 off. Golf, as I mentioned before, lost almost a full week, 6 full days of golf. So every month I've been saying, hey, Golf and Marina, they crushed it. Golf delivered their numbers despite being down 6 days, which is amazing. And that's great. Wellness Center is showing a positive trend. The variance was 11,643 to the good. We are seeing that, however, in day use fees, not so much in memberships coming back. That puzzles me. And when I'm puzzled, I want to find out why. So I've worked with a couple property owners, brought this to my attention, and then Steve and I talked about it. We're going to do a little survey to the wellness center members, and maybe more importantly, the former wellness center members, and find out what we can do better. And if you haven't come back, why haven't you come back? Did you build a gym in your basement? Are you still worried about COVID? Is there some equipment things we need to do differently? So I want your response on that. That'll be a real short little survey, but again, it just goes to the wellness center folks. But I want to know. Racket Club, basically on plan. Swim as predicted. I'm so glad I don't have to say this much longer. Swim as predicted was 32,000 in the red. That's because we didn't have Disharoon for most of July, and we also lowered our fees because that was the right thing to do. Marina did extremely well, as we talked about before. Amenity management's worth talking about, so that's 11,215 to the good. The reason is, as Regis talked about last month, we renegotiated the Bobby Jones contract. It's a very, very different contract, very different fee structure going forward. So we spent basically 5,000 with Bobby Jones instead of the plan of the old contract, which was 15,000. So you see that variance show up in amenity management. You'll continue to see that variance for the rest of the year. So that's good for all of us. And again, total net income was 18,891 to the good. You can go to the next click there. Thank you so much. So year to date, basically the amazing number there is Clubhouse is negative 16,000. That's not a variance. Those are real dollars. So through 7 months of the year, we've lost $16,000 in the Clubhouse. And as you remember, I always say back in 2019, the full year number was a loss of 780. So we are in such a better position than we were before, and hopefully on track to beat our estimate handily for the balance of the year. So we're running 225,000 to the good through July for that one amenity. So if you go to the bottom again, the total income is 334,419 year to date, which is 451,000 better than planned in our original budget with the amenities. Okay, you can go ahead and click, and I'm just going to go right to the next slide. I don't spend much on 2020 because it was such a strange year. That column will be much more important next year than this year. Okay, food and beverage key metrics. So again, as I mentioned in July, starting from the bottom again, F&B net income was minus 11,405, and that was about $1,600 worse than budget. If you look at that, the biggest number that's starting to worry me a tad is our cost of sales. And as we've been going through the 2022 budget this week, almost every vendor, whether it's fertilizer or food or plants or rock or just about anything we buy, everyone's telling us expect a 15 to 20% increase in costs. Anything that requires trucking or that requires some kind of resin is going up dramatically. And so what you're starting to see here is our food costs are increasing. We haven't adjusted our menu prices yet. So you're seeing that our cost of sales percentage is creeping up. So we're watching that really closely. As I mentioned, Jonathan has some changes coming with Chef David. They're looking at menus and making sure that we're pricing everything right and that we're offering the food that both people want, but that we can also provide at the right cost. So again, more to come on that. Payroll costs for the first time this year actually came pretty close to budget. On one hand, you say, good news. We did 57% in payroll against a budget of 58%. So we must be fully staffed, right, Scott? No, actually, our FTEs were 33 versus 42. So we were still well down. What you're seeing there is we pay commissions for banquets every 2 months. We had an awful lot of banquets back in May. So the banquet payout happens to the servers in July. So that's why that's coming up. But we're short today, sitting here today in close to the close of August. We're still about 6 people short out of which 3 of them are servers and 2 of them are cooks. So if anybody ever fancied yourself as a line cook, I've got a perfect place for you to practice your culinary skills 6 days a week. So anyway, we are definitely short of some key people and trying to look at some out of the box ways of maybe doing some different recruiting to get them. So our cost per sales dollar is $1.06 versus $1.05, which was in the budget. That's why we were $1,600 off. Next slide. July financial summary. So this is for the entire business of Big Canoe. So our general operating revenue, $927,831 in July. That's about 7,000 higher than planned. Operating expenses were 11,779 to the red versus our plan. 2 big sources of that. Number one, we promised that we would restaff the gates 24/7 because we felt, as I mentioned before, that public safety is another key reason why we moved here. That includes our gates and that includes security. We found that at our normal posting rate of $11.50 for gate attendance, people were calling up just to laugh at us. They weren't even applying. They were just calling up to laugh at us. You can go to McDonald's in Jasper and start at $15 an hour. So we said, doesn't matter, it's too important. We changed our basically hourly rates for the gates, which then was only fair to go back to existing employees and do the same thing because we need to retain them. And that also led to making a few changes in dispatch. So about 7,000 of that is due to mid-year salary increases for public safety, as well as I mentioned before again that we added 3 new full-time public safety personnel, which gives us 1 person 24/7 for public safety. That's both from a firefighting EMT point of view and also to enable us to get back to doing proactive patrols. And so that has started again. So we had some training costs associated with that, which are also in that number. The other big thing is we did not do some property owner activities this year that we had planned. One was Hook a Kid, and also day trips are down. And then we did do something nice for the Bocce grand opening. So all that together is an 11,000 variance. Net income on the amenities, as I mentioned before, was 190. So we're 18 to the good. Depreciation, we had an adjustment there because part of the Disharoon problem is that our rock slide was damaged. In order to get that back in operation, we had to recoat the sort of Teflon coating that we put on the rock slide to make it crazy for everybody who loves that. I've mentioned before, that's not me, but many people do, and that's great. Therefore, that asset needed to, the old coating did not last as long as it should have because it was damaged by rocks and debris and all kinds of things. So we had to make an adjustment in our depreciation schedule, which is why you see that. So net income from operations was $254,348, which was $5,245 to the good for the month. Go ahead and click. So if you look at that year to date, net income from operations is at $1,327,000. That is almost 600,000 to the good year to date versus budget with 7 months of the year gone. So again, I'm pretty happy about that. And we're in really good shape going into the last 5 months of the year. Next slide. I always like to tell you kind of how we're doing at this point. So this is through 8/22 this month. You'll see Clubhouse has a variance of minus 16,000. That is largely in member events. It's not the pub, it's not Duffers, it's not those things, not alcohol sales. We just didn't do the number of property owner events in the Clubhouse that we did, back in 2019. Which is kind of what we benchmark off of when we build budgets. We look back over the last couple of years and try to make adjustments and look back in order to forecast forward. So that's the biggest change there. Golf is back on track. So again, they did a marvelous job of coming in on plan despite losing almost a week, but golf is looking really strong and everything else is trending positive. So total amenities is 25,000 to the good in revenue, not net income, in revenue, which is 5.75% variance to the positive with 1 week to go in August. And I think Amy will take this slide. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here. We have a total of about 6.8 million on the books. We paid a lot of bills in July. Scott went through some of the extra expenses we have coming out of operating cash, but we're sitting at 3 million. For designated master plan, we spent about $500,000 this month, 400 of it on Creek, as we're starting to wind down the project, and the rest of it was mostly on starting up some of the Pettit Dam projects. At the end of July, the CCF had brought in over $302,000, representing the sale of 121 fee-eligible dwellings. Capital replacement fund is down to 266 as we continue through the high project season. This fund is auto-replenished each month in the amount of depreciation or surplus operating cash. You know, if we need to do that, we don't need to do that yet, depending on the exact timing of projects. Capital reserve is pretty much unchanged from June. Long-term debt is right on schedule, goes down every month. And our debt to equity is at 0.2. And this doesn't mean just our long-term debt. It means all of our liabilities in total compared to equity, and it's a strong position. Our operating cash is up slightly to 0.94, and that means on this particular day, we had almost enough money to pay all of our current liabilities plus debt service for the entire next 12 months. So pretty strong there. Lastly, at this month's Finance Committee meeting, a motion was made and passed recommending that the board consider speeding up some of the master plan timeline to do the projects faster than had been planned. They included the clubhouse in perhaps 22, 23. We talked about this a little bit in the July town hall, and speeding up the rejuvenation of the remaining two 9-hole courses in 23 and 25. The board appreciates the committee's perspective and recommendation, and while we aren't ready to proceed until we have results on strategic planning, but we are interested in seeing some models, and I believe you guys will be coming meeting with us in early September, and we look forward to that. Back to you, Candace.
Okay, thanks, Amy. In our next section, Jenna Lackey will be
Excuse me,
presenting.
Candy?
Yep.
Questions for Scott?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Scott, you had mentioned that the Creek 9 rejuvenation project seems to be rounding third and heading home. Pretty close to schedule, as I recall. I think they had projected we'd be pretty much done in August. So
Yep.
Like I said, we're pretty much on schedule. How are we doing from a budget standpoint? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, Ken, a few months ago, we asked the board, largely because of rework on Creek due to weather conditions that we've been talking about. And also, as predicted, the reason when we did the vote, we set aside roughly $120,000 contingency because we knew we would get into some unknown piece of pipe or rock or something. We basically asked the board for permission to spend up to 70% of, up to $70,000 of that contingency. The board approved that. We are on track then to deliver the project as far as we can possibly see at the moment. And we are getting pretty close to the finish line. So we don't see anything sitting here this afternoon that says we need to tap into any further contingency, and we should be able to bring the project in with the amount that the board had previously authorized.
which is, of course, in line with the $2.2 million.
2.2, yep, 2.2 plus that 70 contingency, yeah.
And we do charge all expenses, whether it's in-house, whether it's the sanders,
Yep.
whether it's equipment, whether it's materials, everything is charged so that there's
Yep.
no
game
being
playing.
played with operating
Nope.
funds or anything.
If Lydell takes out a tree, it goes from the operating budget over to against the Creek 9 project. So it's very accurate accounting.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, good question. Thank you.
Okay. Our next section is a sales report, which Jenna Lackey with Big Canoe Realties provided us with last month, and she'll provide us an updated report through July of home sales, lot sales, and the latest trends. Jenna.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So it is still very much a seller's market. As in fact, there are 18 homes on the market today. So only 18 homes to sell. So it should be a very interesting weekend. We were at a high of 21 earlier this month, but 18 is getting pretty low. Right now, we range from 399,000 up to 1.299 million. That's what's on the market today. So talking about July. Okay, there you go. Thank you. Okay, so the active listings in July, we had 36 listed. So that kind of was holding steady and pretty close through May, June, and July. So we're going to see that trend go down a little bit for August, but through July, it stayed pretty steady at 36 homes. Next slide. Next slide. Oh, there we go. There were 12 homes closed in July. The median was 579. So we did pretty well there. Of course, a lot of pendings and a lot of under contract, and we'll see those come through. Next slide. Okay, so there were 126 lots for sale in July. We had 2 to close. Today, there are 122. So we do have some under contract and we have some pending, but there are really some great lots out there. Some great prices on the lots. They range from 4,800 to 385,000. So there's really something for everyone there. Next slide. Again, the 2 lots, that's what we closed in July, and we hope to see a few more in August. Aside from these numbers, there are 2,761 finished homes. We were talking about that earlier in the week. Some folks were talking about that. So that's an accurate number of how many completed homes there are in Big Canoe. And there are 29 homes under construction right now. And the price to build per square foot is still well above $200. So hopefully we'll see that come down. We'll sell some lots and we'll see some movement there. But that's pretty much what's going on with the sales in Big Canoe right now.
Jenna, thank you. Anyone have any questions for Jenna? Okay, we'll move to thank you, Jenna. We'll move to our business section, which we do have a number of items to cover, but we'll begin with the approval of the July minutes, which the board has looked at this week. Is there a motion for a vote? Motion. Okay, second. So, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? No. Okay, thank you. Our next section, Regis will bring us a quick update on the strategic planning.
Join the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Candy. As Scott has mentioned already, the voice of the customer or strategic plan survey has been out, I guess, for about a week, 10 days, 2 weeks now. We have had 1,400 responses. Also, you know, that Scott also mentioned that number. That's out of 4,000 emails that were sent. So that's a 35% return rate, which I am certainly hoping we can do better than that. The survey as we've said and we've emphasized, is very, very important. It is your voice in the future of Big Canoe. This information is going to be used to make policy and operations decisions. So if you want your voice to be heard, make sure you fill out your survey. Interesting thing to note that of the approximately 1,400 surveys that have been returned, 93% have been from full-time residents. So that's great. As far as full-time residents are concerned, if that trend continues, it means they have a very outsized voice in these decisions that will be made. So we really do hope to hear from the part-time owners, the weekenders, as well as rental property owners. We're interested in hearing what everyone's opinion is. So the survey closes in a week, and we hope to get that number up. I would like to see it at least 2,000 responses, if not more.
Candace,
Thanks, Regis. Bob.
let me give a plug for the T4, the people who actually put the process together. I've taken a lot of surveys in my career, and I have to say that it's a fun survey to take. It really is. It's very challenging, not challenging in difficulty, but it just really gets you thinking. And I take my hat off to those who really did the great job putting that survey together.
I agree with that, Bob. I took my survey or filled out my survey yesterday. My wife did it a week or so ago, but I was kind of putting it off because I don't like to fill out surveys. But as I finished it, I said, well, hey, that was kind of fun. So yeah, I agree. They did a good job.
Thanks, Regis. Bob Crouch is going to talk about some discussion we've had with COVID-19 this past week with the board. Bob.
Before I do that, let me say a couple of things. Number one, recognize the sacrifice that our armed forces made in Afghanistan in a very tragic day. Keep them in our thoughts. On a happier note, this is National Dog Day. So that affects a lot of us in Big Canoe.
Yeah.
I let my dog swim in the creek today, so I did my part.
Absolutely. If I spoil them rotten, I do that every day. Oh, well.
Truth in advertising too, the pictures that you saw of our two dogs, unfortunately, they're no longer with us. If you see me out walking now, it's with our new dog Finnegan. So he's our new love, but you never lose them. You miss them every day.
Yeah, for sure.
Back to the topic that Candace introduced for me, COVID-19. In the wake of the Delta variant, it's a timely and important topic. There have been questions recently about current board policy. The policy is that property owners are mature, informed individuals who know their general health condition and vaccination status and are fully capable of making decisions in their best interest. This is not a statement that all property owners should carry on without restriction in the face of the Delta virus. Rather, they as individuals should act responsibly given their risk tolerance. The board feels it's important to understand the vaccination penetration in Big Canoe. The data is impossible to obtain through official sources due to Big Canoe being in 2 counties and that some owners receive their vaccinations in other locations. Given the potential for great variance in estimates of vaccine penetration, we seek to obtain more accurate data and so are considering a very brief confidential survey. The information will provide owners with one more piece of data as we make our decisions regarding our well-being. Please stay tuned. That's it, Candace.
Thanks, Bob. In our next section, Amy Truffenbaum is going to introduce the second reading of policies and procedures 152.
Fortunately, I'm not actually going to read it. We went over it in fair detail last month, and so anybody who wants to learn a lot of the detail can go back and watch that video. We did attach it to today's agenda, and you will see a few very minor red line changes that we added some specificity in areas and just a few other good ideas that people came up with. Probably the most notable item that we're adding is something regarding the bid process to cover professional fees. While it's desirable to consider periodic relationship changes, just as we did with our attorney in early 2020, and we already do with our audit role every 3 years, there needed to be acknowledgement that we don't bid out professional relationships on a transactional basis. In other words, we already have multiple attorneys that we talk to specializing in different areas, but we don't seek out 3 attorneys every time we need a legal opinion. And we don't change our engineer of record every year for quarterly reports or consulting projects. These are relationships that are vetted thoroughly in the beginning and relied upon until there's some good reason to change. Some of these kind of professional services have attributes of both operating expenditures and capital expenditures. So architecture fees is an example of that. It seems like a service, but if we go through with the project, it actually turns into capital. So to make it simple, we decided to cover it at a high level in the bid process with just getting a requirement of at least 1 registered professional as defined by the state of Georgia. So that's the biggest change that we're making this time, just specifying how we handle professional relationships. This will be advanced to a 3rd reading next month by our policy, and in the event we come up with some other changes, we'll incorporate them and vote during next month. That's it.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, thanks, Amy. Well, there's 2 more items before we move to ratification and votes tonight for a total of 5 topics. I just want to do a very quick rules and regulations update that Scotty talked about in the town hall meeting. Underway right now, Ricky Jordan and Public Works are reviewing the A rules related to enforcement for property owner guests and contractors, and the C rules are being reviewed by Elton Guggelin, chair of the AECD, and Trina Parrish, manager of AECD. They're meeting at least several times a week per the GM, and then the governing docs committee is now reviewing these rules, but they're meeting monthly. And we hope that with these recommended changes and update dates, they'll be concluded by late 4th quarter. Okay, with that, Scott, I'll turn it over to you to talk about meetings we've had with Dawson and Pickens County.
Thank you again. So there have been a lot of concerns over the summer that have come to my attention or the board's attention about a few property owners who almost were renting their homes looking more like a hotel with very, very high numbers of people advertised as you can come to Big Canoe, stay in this house, and you can sleep 20 people there. So the board and I wanted to go talk to the 2 counties because they're the ones responsible for setting the septic capacity of everything built in Big Canoe. We don't do that, the counties do. And that septic capacity determines how many people you can have stay in the house, especially stay overnight in the house. So Bob Littell and I went off and talked to Dawson County, and then Amy and I went off and talked to Pickens County. What we've basically learned is both counties, if you're going to rent your house, if you're a property owner and you're going to rent your home in Big Canoe, you need to go apply for a permit to do so with your respective county, depending on where you live. And in Dawson County, that is a $200 a year permit that you need to apply for. when you go, they're going to ask for proof that you have registered your home for rental with Big Canoe, because we are a covenanted community, and one of our regulations is that you basically, if you're going to rent, you fill out an AECC form with Trina Parish. It tells us that you're going to rent. You pay a $25 one-time fee. You basically tell us who your emergency contacts are. All those terrible pictures we saw before, we need to know who to call. So that's the purpose of that. So if you go to Dawson County, they're going to say, please show me your Big Canoe rental form, and then they will charge you $200, and you will fill out a bunch of forms, and they will tell you that this is what the septic capacity of your house is rated for. And the way it works is for every bedroom, you get to sleep 2, plus you get 2 more in the house. So if Dawson, regardless of how many bedrooms you think you have, what matters is how many bedrooms they think you have. So if you have 4 bedrooms on record, you're allowed to sleep 10 in that house. And that's what they're going to give you a permit for. If you say you want to sleep 12, 15, they're going to say, well, that's great. You need to upgrade your septic capacity or put in a different thing, a whole supplemental field or whatever. So that is a process you have to do with the county that you live in. Pickens is the same way. They basically have a $75 a year fee. You're basically in Pickens getting a business license, because they look at it as you are operating essentially a business out of your house. So $75 once a year. They're going to ask the same thing. May I see your Big Canoe rental registration form? And upon proof of that, they're going to basically say, okay, this is the number you can sleep. Again, every bedroom gets you 2 plus 2 in the house. If you want to do more than that, you're in violation of the septic design that was permitted when they did the perk test and everything. And so they're going to ask you to either refrain from that or increase your septic capacity. In all these cases, they are now providing Big Canoe with the information on how many can be slept in each house, and we're exchanging lists. So that way we're keeping both counties, and they're keeping us up to date. We're helping each other to know who's renting within Big Canoe, so that we can make sure we have a form, so we know who to contact if there's an emergency or something. And on the other hand, they can know who's renting in Big Canoe, and they can make sure that they're getting the appropriate for renting. Now it's a law. You basically need to submit essentially hotel motel tax. And the counties are kind of wanting that because that's revenue for them. And so, we're reciprocating on our lists. So it's really important, if you're going to rent your house, to make sure you're registering number 1 with Trina, and you can get that form on our website or call Trina. And so we know who to call and if there's a problem. At the same time, whoever you live with, whatever county you're in, got to go over and fill out the form. And that is a yearly process. It's just like getting a business license. If you've ever run a business, every year you submit to the city of Suwanee a business license, and they collect their appropriate money. So we'll continue to publish that to you in inside the gates and things, in case you're a little confused about that or have any questions. But it is something that counties require, and we're working together to make sure we keep our lists up to date. And that's kind of what came out of the meetings, Candace.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, we'll move to our next section, which is ratifying 2 actions that the board took last week. One was on the contract with Geosyntec to advance approximately $116,000. The approval was for the proposal by our engineer of record, which is Geosyntec, for an analysis and recommendations concerning upgrades to the spillway and the lower level outlet dam before presenting to the Georgia Safe Dams later this year, and as part of the overall master plan for Pettit Dam discussed with the community earlier this year. Since this master plan was not totally known at the time, it could not be approved during last year's budget and needed board approval at this point. There is no construction taking place, just the analysis of what our engineer of record thinks should be done And then it'll have to be approved and then permitted by the Georgia Safe Dams before we actually can bid this work out. Does anyone have any questions or, yes, Bob?
No, I
Oh,
was, if there are no questions, yeah.
Okay. And this number has held steady for the work done to be done for the rest of the year since I think February when they submitted the original budget. I'm going to go over the second ratification because again, both of these were approved unanimously, and then we'll do the formal voting. The second was the approval of an operating agreement for Big Canoe, establishing Big Canoe Amenities LLC. In the past, our experience rating has been between 20 and 60% more than what has been paid to the health insurance companies, and this cost has been passed back to the POA. Our benefits broker in recent months suggesting setting up a new entity provide a way to reduce our health insurance costs and to hopefully reset our experience rating in future years. The Big Canoe Amenities Operating Agreement provides for this new entity to be wholly owned by the POA. This company will include all amenity and support staff, while the POA will still include administration, public works, and public safety departments. There'll be no change in financial reporting or additional costs associated with the new entity. This has undergone considerable vetting, discussion, and a lot of due diligence with our insurance companies, and been given a clean bill by a CPA who is also an attorney along with Malden and Jenkins. So does anyone have any questions?
Just make a comment that my understanding is that this is of no visibility to property owners, no effect whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
The objective is to save money.
Right, exactly.
And the intent, maybe Scott, maybe you can go into a little bit more. It's not going to, just because somebody's in one entity instead of the other, their health insurance cost is not different.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The total bill is different, but it's average cost and out for everyone. No one gets a better rate or a lesser rate, correct?
We will blend the costs across all employees so that they don't really see any difference either.
I also want to mention, I mean, we had multiple attorneys involved in this as well. So this has been thoroughly put through the ringer.
Right. Okay. Well, then may I have a motion for a vote?
One other point,
Okay.
Amy or Scott, do you want to, I think you've made some preliminary estimates as to the amount of this will save in the first year. I think that would be helpful for the property owners to know that.
We've been facing an annual increase in our healthcare costs of between 25 and 30% a year, which is just unsustainable is the word. This plan that we're doing, if the board ratifies this tonight, hopefully gets us down to either flat to down versus in 2022 versus where we currently are. So it resets the escalation. Doesn't mean we won't have 20 to 30% the following year, but at least we're starting off on a much lower base than we would be if we just kept escalating every year at 20 to 30% from where we are now, which would translate into some really hard decisions about not doing certain things in Big Canoe, and we're certainly moving in the opposite direction of more public safety and all the things we've been talking about, and upgrading the property owner experience. And we want to try to mitigate the assessment increases as much as possible, and healthcare is one of our biggest costs. So this is a really good move. It, like I said, it doesn't hurt the employees in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't change anything about our taxes, our accounting, our reporting. It's a disregarded entity as far as the IRS is concerned, and it just helps reset our healthcare rate. That's all.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Anything else before we vote? Okay, again, this is a ratification for both of the votes that we did last week. May I have a motion for a vote?
I'll make a motion.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, and then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, no opposed. Okay. We'll move to our last section, which is our board voting on several important matters. The first and foremost is what Amy Truffenbaum's governing documentation committee under Ann Lair have worked on since early mid first quarter. And that is approving the board today, just approving the recommended bylaw changes for the November property owner vote. And these are going to be reviewed by Amy over the next couple of minutes because it's complicated.
It's hard to believe, I could reduce 8 months of work into one slide, but I did. I wanted everyone to be able to have it in one place to just stare at it as I'm going through each one of these. Last year we chartered a team of owners to review and update our governing docs, and we were going to start with the bylaws. And late December, we put out a call for volunteers. We seated the committee in late January, and over the next 6-7 months, they worked their way through them up to what you see tonight, which is where the official process to amend begins. They put a lot of hours into this, and they also prepared a more fully amended and restated set of a lot of things, which at some point after we achieve the right to conduct balloting electronically, we may be able to take that on. In the meantime, we're going to act on these, and we're focusing it on changes that unnecessarily cost us money. They're convoluted, they're confusing, unfair. They detract from getting property owners to run and serve on the board and impede our day-to-day conduct of business. You can find the report and these actions posted on the PO website under reports and studies. And tonight I will run through them. We will advance to the vote. Unfortunately, it takes 2/3 of all eligible voters to enact any of these changes. But we'll be educating you a lot about what these are over the next couple of months. We're working on the exact language as soon as tonight is over. And let's see. We need a really high turnout. Before I get it underway, let me just say that there has been some misinformation circulated recently that we are submitting the Big Canoe POA to provisions under the Georgia POA Act. The act was briefly talked about during our Q&A in the July town hall for anybody who watched it. For it to be effectuated, we must amend our covenants by a similar large quorum and then continue the amending process to make changes not already stipulated in the act. So the recent matter pertained to restrictions on rental property. So I want to set the record straight. The Governance Doc Review Committee does recommend that we eventually do submit to the act for a variety of reasons, not at all related to rentals. But this is not part of the bylaws proposed changes, and nothing final has been decided. So just want to put that to rest. If you remember back in 2020, early 2020, there were 2 proposed bylaws changes that did not pass. They were largely supported, but just we did not get the 2/3 quorum to move forward on it. One of them is on the ballot again, and I'll go over that in a minute. The other we determined is really not necessary and can easily be remedied at the administrative level. The existing covenants are kind of poorly worded, but should be interpreted to mean that someone becomes 30 days past due, 60 days after bill date. The bylaws already accurately provide for that, so we don't need to change them. So once we handle it, the only thing that needs to be changed is we need to correct the number of days in the rules and regs based on how they read. And we're going to be working on that in the A rules next anyway. Okay, we're going to vote on these in November. It's going to be presented as a menu of individual changes. They will pass or fail on their own merits. So if you vote no on one, it doesn't mean you can't vote yes on another one. The first one is adoption of electronic procedures. This will allow us to deliver all of your documents and for you to vote electronically. This is available under Georgia law. Unfortunately, we have to amend the bylaws to allow it. It's pretty straightforward. It'll bring us into the 21st century. We'll save a lot of money, and it will make it easier for property owners to vote. So it's a good thing. Everybody will have to opt in. So if there's anyone who doesn't feel comfortable doing this, they can continue to use the old method. So don't be afraid that this is going to cut that out. If you don't want it, you don't have to do it. Rights of an owner's spouse. This is one of the ones that failed in early 2020. This would allow an owner's spouse to exercise any of the membership powers and privileges of the owner, even if their name is not on the deed, including expressly the right to run and serve on the board. These days, a lot of people don't have their name on the deed for estate planning or other legitimate purposes, and it's unfair and results in otherwise good candidates being unable to serve. The third is a quorum. This would eliminate the convoluted existing three-tiered approach, ultimately working its way to a 25% quorum. As it's done now, it's unwieldy and confusing, and I do need to note that, and I appreciate their perspective, while the GovDoc committee recommended that we go to 20%, and Georgia nonprofit law allows us to go down to 10%, the board is going to stick with 25%, keeping it as it is right now, just simplifying the process. We historically have not had a problem achieving that at all in normal voting. It's only when something requires a 2/3 quorum we've run into that problem. But we're going to fix that with number 4, which is amendments. This would allow future amendments of bylaws to be accomplished by the majority of all eligible votes or 2/3 of the votes cast, whichever is less. Right now, the comparative is 2/3 of all eligible votes. Georgia law permits this, and it will help prevent situations similar to the ones I just mentioned. Next one, vacancies on board of directors. This would allow the board to fill a vacancy when only one elected director vacancy occurs instead of the current 2. Achieving a quorum to conduct business can become difficult when individuals are sick or out of town, and during times when there's no developer director, as is the case now. So they are recommending that we be allowed to do this. Next, another who can serve on the board. This would remove someone serving on the board if they are no longer an owner, unless all other directors vote to retain the person. It only follows if you are not eligible to run, you shouldn't be eligible to serve. However, the board does need the flexibility to override this as an automatic removal by unanimous consent in times where achieving the quorum might otherwise be really difficult. And particularly if number 5 doesn't pass, it makes this even more critical. A last who can serve on the board. This would allow non-senior staff, POA employees with no one reporting to them to run and serve. We have enough trouble already getting great candidates in the first place. This might attract more participation, and we know it's been an impediment in the past. Lastly, whichever of these pass or fail, those that pass, and you will have to elect that this is okay with you, this will allow us to completely restate the bylaws into just one document. So when we have to go back and do research in the future, you don't have to remember there were 8 different amendments and you got to remember which one came first. They'll be completely restated in a clean copy, which will help all of us. So I hope you all can see these are pretty straightforward, pretty simple to grasp, nothing out of the ordinary. Just we want to save some money and make it easier for people to serve and vote. And we're going to need your help, a lot of help to make this happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, well, I would like to make a motion for the board to vote on putting this on the November ballot. I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, well, thanks, Amy. The last two topics we need to vote on is one under audit and risk. Richard Huddock has been recommended by Audit and Risk as a non-voting member until January of 2022, when several openings occur on their committee, and at which time he would serve a three-year term, 2022 to 2025. And this is comparable to the process that the Finance Committee uses. Richard has some 40 years of experience in employee benefits, primarily with Northwest Mutual agencies, and has contributed to several POA projects for the board and Director of Finance since 2015, when he became a full-time property owner. Are there any questions before we vote? Okay. Okay, may I have a motion for a vote?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Our last topic and vote for tonight is to move forward with Big Canoes Community Garden, which has been led by Alan De Niro and several others since they formed a group in the spring of 2020 to pursue establishing this community garden. There's been considerable due diligence undertaken, including visiting other community gardens, multiple consultations with the Georgia Department of Natural Resources and the Big Bear Project. They've looked at use of low voltage electric fence with solar power, and then commonly used practices by farmers among the other items that they've looked at. Their site selection was based upon 6 criteria through many meetings with Scott and others, including not being located on a present or future Big Canoe prime real estate site, where wildlife traffic is low or not intrusive, not highly visible location, but easily assessed and not disruptive to surrounding areas, but also still remains on Big Canoe property. The location that was finally agreed upon was the borrower's pit at Hubbard Road next to the RV park. And the location will encompass some 3,500 square feet initially. This was presented to the POA board in July with a detailed operating and capital budget and governance documents, including let's see, how to run a nonprofit, rights and responsibilities of directors, officers, and participants. Very detailed report. We were all very impressed with the process that they used, and again, just the detail with respect to their numbers and considerations. They have a projected launch date by spring of 2022. So what the POA has agreed to, or the board to this point, is that they agree to rent to the Big Canoe Garden Committee for the sum of $1 per year for this roughly 3,500 square feet of land located on POA property. The land will be provided to the Big Canoe Garden community will be in a cleared, graded, and rolled condition. The POA has also agreed to provide fill dirt, likely silt from Sconti, to the garden community at no cost. And these members will be provided free access to cross other POA-owned property, which would be in the borrower's pit, to access the garden site. The land rental agreement will be contractually documented at such time that they're granted a 501c3 status by the IRS. So in conclusion, the land clearing and grading will not commence until sufficient Big Canoe property owner interest in the Big Canoe Garden project is evidenced by the receipt of deposits from Big Canoe property owners to them in the amount of $50 each for a minimum of 50 plots. They're currently projecting a total of 106 plots in total. So the final approval by the board is really subject to the conditions outlined herein, but we wanted to go ahead and I'm making a motion that they can go ahead and proceed in getting their 501(c) status and the other requirements that we have outlined over the last couple of minutes. So are there any questions?
I would just like to make one clarification, Candace. This is not an amenity like bocce. This is a community that Mr. De Niro and he's assembled a board that is going to be, as was mentioned, a 501(c)(3). Other than the clearing of the land, there will be no POA expense associated with this venture. And we certainly think this is going to be a great enhancement to Big Canoe. Farm to table is certainly very popular these days, and we are confident it is going to be very successful for this committee.
Thanks, Regis. Any other thoughts, questions? So, okay. Well, then I'd like to make a motion to vote on just letting them move forward with, again, final approval by the board subject to what I outlined a few minutes ago. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, well, so moved. Well, this concludes our meeting, and I'd like to adjourn unless there's anything else that needs to be discussed this evening before we take questions from property owners. Okay, is there a motion?
Motion.
Okay, second.
Sure.
Okay, well, this concludes our meeting and opens it up to questions from our property owners.
All right,
Tim,
right now we've got 8 comments and questions.
Okay.
Okay, the first comes to us from Ronald McKenzie, lot 6177. What is the plan to redo the basketball court?
I'll take it. So it's underway right now. So basically, it should be finished in a matter of weeks. So if you go out to Wildcat and you walk over near the restrooms and look to your left, there is the old original bocce courts have been destroyed and removed. The crumbling retaining wall has been rebuilt with a permanent stone structure that's there, modular stone structure. And they're well on their way to creating the specification that the subcommittee developed, which gives 2 half-court basketball courts, as well as lining for the children's game of Foursquare. So it is well underway, and we'll have a grand opening on that pretty soon. So won't be long.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, Nikki Gray from 6201 asks about the future surveys being linked to a POA account instead of sent by email. Notifications could still be sent by email, but spoof and spam surveys also occur.
Tim, you could take that one, or Justin.
Yeah, I think that asking people to go into their account to find a survey would reduce the number of people taking the survey. And we work very hard to make this a good process. Kat and Mark have worked extremely hard to get this process working right. We'll continue to work on it. We get a much better response by sending these out by email. And I think that's the best way to go for now.
And probably just to add to that, the firm that helped us with the property owner satisfaction survey, which remember we'll do every late January. So every year we'll track our progress. Last year, out of sending out 4,000, we got about 2,000 responses, 50%. They hadn't seen that before in any community. So they were amazed at how engaged Big Canoe property owners were, and they were thrilled with the response rate. So that's why Regis said, come on, we're close. We got 1 week left on the news survey. And if anybody just take 15 minutes, it is actually kind of fun because you're charting the future of Big Canoe.
Right.
So
Yeah.
one more plug for please take 15 minutes this weekend.
Yes.
All right, and Ronald McKenzie follows up with a correction on the comment about the house fire. He believes that his renters called 911 immediately. Just a comment to the earlier story from the fire department volunteers.
Okay.
Sheila Wilson from 9022. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
William Shaw, little editorial comment you can read here, but he asks, why don't we just go with quarterly reports rather than monthly financial detailed reports?
Actually, in our bylaws, it requires us to do what we do and to actually go ahead and issue all of the detail, which to your point, Mr. Shaw, is far, far, far more than any other community I've ever served on. I've served on boards of communities and I've been living as a resident in communities, and we go pretty far. But I think that's okay, because that way everybody knows what's going on. And if you want to watch it every couple months, you can, or, that way it's really up to you. And actually Eastman Kodak went under because they didn't listen to me about moving to digital faster, but that's a whole nother story. We won't, I think that's a case study for Harvard or something. I think it's actually been done. So
Many, many, many times.
many, many times, indeed. So
What,
Okay,
the comment about how does Creek 9 compare to Afghanistan?
well, the president was giving a speech and Bill wanted us to pause the meeting so we could tune into the presidential address.
Got it.
Okay.
All right, let's go next. Holly Lundberg from 2637. Thank you, board, for recognizing that each homeowner is capable of making their own careful, informed decision regarding COVID-19 risk and tolerance.
Most welcome.
To Mickey Gray from 6201. With the discussed changes to employee health plans, will employees be required to be vaccinated against COVID-19?
So we respect employees' choice. I would tell you that my team got together, my whole leadership team, and we decided to go ahead and do an incentive similar to what Walmart and many other companies are doing to say thank you to our employees who either have been vaccinated or are getting vaccinated. So there will be an incentive plan we're putting in place to help our employees feel good about getting vaccinated.
Jennifer Wagner from 7136. What are the steps in place for remediating a rental property that is not following the rental regulations?
So if it's a Big Canoe rule and regulation, like we talked about at the town hall, Mrs. Wagner, basically you call public safety as soon as you think there's a noise issue, or if you see trash, or if you see cars blocking the street, or if you see cars parked overnight, or any of those things, you call public safety, especially with our additional staff. They'll come out and they'll do a complete report. The property owner, by our covenants, is responsible for the conduct of their guests. So that way we can track if you start to have a given property owner where week after week there's issues, they will be fined, and we have the right to escalate those fines. So that deals with Big Canoe's rules and regulations. What we were talking about before was the county's rules and regulations. And in those cases, the county, if they find that the septic capacity is being violated by too many overnight guests, they will send certified letters out to the property owner and ask for a discussion about that. And they have their own procedures for making sure that either that doesn't happen again, or, as I mentioned before, it gets rectified with more septic capacity, which is not a cheap thing to do, and in many lots can't be done at all. So, but we leave that one up to the counties. Yeah, Amy.
Let me just add two quick things. One is if we do find out, and this is in our rules, be sure and read Rule A1 and A14. If we find out you're renting your house and you aren't registered with us, it's $1,000 fine. And we just sent a whole bunch of letters. I think everybody got their form in right away.
They did.
That's another thing. And then if it's bad enough, again, read through how the fines work. But if it gets bad enough, you will not be able to get people through the gate.
I'd also like to add that when Scott and I went to Dawson County, they are very concerned about some of the problems that they're having in the whole county, and are in the process of developing a new ordinance that they hope to have completed by the end of the year that will crack down on a number of issues.
Thanks, Bob.
All right, our last question, Amy Slaughter from 5540. For the community garden, would you be interested in space between the north gate and home restaurant?
Well, I guess, I mean, since I've been kind of since my wife is on the board of the community garden committee, no conflict of interest. I think that this process is Candy has explained, the committee went through literally 18 months search and trial and error trying to find the perfect site. And right now, I think they have pretty much settled on the borrow pit location, which is perhaps not perfect, but is as close as it's going to get. So I think they're quite happy with that site and appreciate the offer, but at this point, I don't, it's kind of late in the game to make a change like that.
There were just a couple of
There's also a little bit of economic benefit to them of that site because it's the area next to the new RV storage facility. And their hope is we have that all fenced, and their hope is to actually share some of that fencing with us, so they don't have to enclose their whole garden. They can enclose 3 sides of it, and they use our fence on one side. There's also water and electricity in that area, which provide them some economic benefit of, they'll have their own meters and things like that, but the infrastructure exists over there. So actually, Alan was pretty excited when we found that spot. So.
Any other questions, Tim?
All right, that wraps it up from the audience. Thank you so much for your answers.
Okay. Thank you, and good evening, everyone.
Yeah,
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
great time.
Right, all. Go hug a dog.
I will.
Me too.